How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm also good.
Yeah, so my audio and video is clear, right?
Yeah, and what about mine?
Yeah, they're perfect. Yeah,
Okay, okay, all right.
great. Okay, so just to begin with a short introduction, I would
Yeah,
say that Queer Academia is an initiative by Men Life Foundation, which aims towards a more inclusive and sensitive education for all Indian schools and all students, right? And today we are here to discuss a paper on curricular interventions to make Indian schools more gender inclusive and to bring more gender inclusivity and equity in Indian schools. By this paper is written by Archisha Arora, and today we are here to discuss this paper. So, with Arpit, would you like to introduce yourself to our
yeah,
viewers?
sure. So you all already know that I'm Arpit and I'm currently working as an intern in the management department of the Queer Academia by Man Life Foundation. Yeah, and I'm also pursuing B Honors Applied Psychology, and right now I'm in my second year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into the paper straight away. Okay, so what do you think about the literacy rates and the education system in India, especially with respect to gender equality and equity?
Yeah. So I won't speak anything without records. So I have a data from Census 2011. So according to Census 2011, they have defined literacy. So according to the Census 2011, a person is 7 and above who can both read and write with an understanding in any language is treated as illiterate. And there is a
Hmm.
condition also, if a person can only read but not write is not considered literate. So here we can understand how complex is the
Hmm.
concept of literacy, right?
Yeah.
And we have figures here. So the literacy rate of our country, India, is 74.04% according to the census 2011, and we are waiting for census 2021, right?
Yeah.
And now we'll talk about gender. So we have
Hmm.
figures here. The male literacy rate is 82.14% and 65.46% in the case of females. So
Hmm.
we can observe here is a gap of around 17%.
Hmm.
And there is a report by First Post dated August 21, 2019. So, according to this report, India's female literacy rate has gone up, but we are in progress, but we are not that progressive because we are
Hmm.
still 22% behind the world average. Like 22%,
Hmm.
it's huge. And
Right.
we can also observe that education among young women is rising. And
Hmm.
we also have interesting figures here. According to Census 2011, that 80% of the country's young women aged between 7 and 29 are literate. Means 80%
Hmm.
young women are literate. But the same figure drops below 30% if we talk about women aged 60 and above. It's
Hmm.
just 30%. And this gender disparity widens if we talk about the rural areas and the women from the marginalized
Hmm.
communities, like from SC, ST categories. And if we look into the various tribes, if
Hmm.
we talk about the states of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, so we all know what is the condition of tribal women in these areas. and
Hmm.
and we all know this gender disparity has somehow blocked the development of our country.
Right. Absolutely. The figures speak for themselves, what the disparity there is in the country right now. And I can't even suppose without figures, of course, what is the condition for trans people and for other gender identities for which we don't even have any data, right?
Yeah,
So,
right. Our country considers them as third gender.
right,
So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, so we'll wait for the 2021 census for the results to show what exactly is the situation there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see how progressive we are gonna be in this year.
Let's see how the decade has spanned. So these are the figures, these are the numbers that are proof. What would be your subjective experience? Would you like to share about how your school was with respect to gender disparity, like the number of girls to number of boys? Would you like to
Mhm.
comment on that?
Okay, I think this gender ratio depends on the subject and stream also.
Hmm.
So I was from medical background, that is, I had physics, chemistry, and biology. So in my
Hmm.
class, I think 60% were the girls and 40% were the boys. So,
Hmm.
and it depends, like in the non-medical field, that is physics, chemistry, and maths.
Hmm.
In that batch, I think there were 40 boys and 10 girls. So we can't really talk
Hmm.
about like the gender in general. So there are many factors
Hmm.
which define that gender ratio in the classroom or a college. Like if we
Right.
look at this, the subject of psychology, I know you are also from
Hmm.
psychology.
Yeah.
So the psychology is a subject which is mostly taken up by girls, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like if I tell you my case, so in school we were like a batch of 16 and there were only four boys. And in if you see psychology and a lot of other humanities courses, there are girls colleges who that offer these courses to women, and there are a lot of men and boys who would want to join these courses, but they are not just good enough colleges that offer these courses to co-ed and to all genders, actually, I would say.
Yes, if we look at the situation of DU, most of the
Hmm.
best colleges of psychology, for example, like GS and Mary, LSR, all are
Hmm.
female colleges, that is women's colleges. Like,
Right.
yeah, subjects are also kind of gendered, you know.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so even within engineering, you see mechanical engineering, there you would see that there's a huge gender ratio
Yeah,
gap that there is, right?
yes.
So,
And even the
yeah.
families promote their girls to not take engineering. Like, there are some
Hmm.
stereotypes and all, you know.
Yeah, we
Like
cannot. Yeah.
engineering is not made for girls, it's just for boys.
Exactly. And you see, teaching jobs are more taken up by women because what would they do after they get married? How will they manage and balance their family and their work? So they tend to take jobs that have less working number of hours. So yes, there have been a huge gendering of disciplines, of courses, and of colleges, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so to move on a little bit, how would you, Arpit, define curriculum? Because a curriculum is a major portion of the schooling system. This is what the classes and the batches all revolve around. That is the basic curriculum. So, how would you define
Yeah.
curriculum?
So according to me, curriculum is the systematic method or way to make the learning more interesting, I could say, or make the learning systematic to the students.
Hmm.
And it defines some standards also for the students, how they are gonna like pass the exams. And it
Hmm.
also includes the activities, the co-curricular activities, which will help in the learning.
Hmm. Right.
Yes.
So I do agree that a curriculum needs to be a little systematic and a little organized so that we can proceed again in an organized fashion. But do you think that in order to be systematic, a curriculum also has to be very static or very fixed? Or can it be more dynamic in nature and can it be more ever changing?
According to me, curriculum should be dynamic because
Hmm.
we daily read in news and all that most of the researches are coming daily. And if
Hmm.
we look at our textbooks, I don't think so they are revised like in 15 or 20 years.
Hmm.
And even the history keeps on changing. We are observing daily events, but they are not like included in the history textbooks.
Hmm.
And if we look into the researches like related to science, biology, physics, the recent researches are not included in our textbooks. So,
Hmm.
according to me, books should be at least revised within 2 years.
Right. Right. Yeah, and we see that, like you said, books are not revised for years and years. And also, there is a change in discourse also that keeps happening. For example, we were discussing in one of the lives before that how the focus of history books is more on the male rulers or the kings, and it's not more on the female part of the history, right? So now the discourse has changed, and now we do want to know more about powerful women and powerful trans people and basically all genders. But the books have not revised themselves in that as well. It's not even about including the newer updates, but also how we used to look at things in the past that has also changed. So I
Yeah.
think there's a need to incorporate that as well. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, so would you like to suggest some changes that need to be made in the curriculum? Of course, there's a need to include a lot more. But other than that, what changes can we make in the curriculum to make it more gender inclusive and not only for women? I mean, of course, for women, but also for many, many other genders that exist.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like our textbooks just represent some of the women, and according to me, I studied history and all till class 10th, so I
Hmm.
think I just read about Rani Lakshmi Bai and
Yeah.
the second woman Indira Gandhi.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's all I remember. Just two ladies in the complete Indian history.
Hmm.
And like, where are the other lady, like freedom fighters? There
Hmm.
is no representation of women, like not enough representation, I should say. So our
Hmm.
syllabus is completely, curriculum is completely male centric. So
Right.
we should change that. We should include more female characters in even in the English syllabus also. And we are reading, I think, Helen Keller in class 10th in CBSE, the book
Yeah.
by Helen Keller. And in class 12th, The Invisible Man and
Hmm.
Three Men in a Boat. I think
Yeah.
one of our speakers also mentioned in the past
Hmm.
lives. So I
Hmm.
don't think that there is any need to include such books. Like, those books were written in, I think, 19th century. We
Hmm.
should come up with some contemporary ideas, some new novels which represent our LGBTQ community, or
Hmm.
yeah, our syllabus should be more gender inclusive. And if we
Right.
look into the primary school syllabus, the traditional concept of family is shown. We should include the new concept. Like in the picture, they are just portraying a man and a woman and two babies with them. That's a family.
Hmm.
But
Right.
we should represent the family in a new way.
Hmm.
There could be two males also, two females also.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you brought a very important point here that education system changes need not to be like at class 6 or at class 7, but actually from elementary level, so that the concept of gender fluidity, of gender inclusivity, sensitivity, all of these are so normalized for people that they grow up being more sensitive and they don't wait till class 6 to come till class 7 or 8 to become more sensitive, right? I think till then a lot of students early on face a lot of bullying also, so it's very important to start tackling this at the very base level, I would say.
And
Right.
I would also like to add on,
Hmm.
in our primary classes, like in second and third, we are taught about gender, right? And in
Hmm.
Hindi, there is a chapter link. So we are
Yeah.
like just told thrilling and pulling and male and
Hmm.
female. You know, we are
Hmm.
still teaching children just binary notion of gender. We should
Right.
include the complete that gender is a complete spectrum. It's just not about binary form, one or
Hmm.
zero.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was also reading a paper a few weeks before, and there was a very important finding that they had, that in some schools, the guest lecturers that they brought in, they were from the LGBTQIA plus community. And I found that intervention to be so beautiful, because when they see their representatives in teachers also, that are out and proud, and there are students who can reach them, so that also, I think, provides them the opportunity to involve in safe spaces with adults who have gone through this and who can guide them through this. So I think one important change in curriculum could be that the teachers could also, the teachers from the community could also be invited to be guest lecturers in schools. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think the same, but I think it's a sensitive to talk about this, but I have read the news that
Hmm.
LGBTQ or the teachers from the community are bullied by the students of senior secondary classes, that is by 11th and 12th, and they are called by names and slurs are used for such teachers. Yeah, so it's like very insensitive.
Right. And that is very unfortunate, and I think that is why we need to start it early on. Like we said, that this sensitivity needs to build from elementary level only, so that these things don't happen in senior classes and senior secondary classes. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so would you like to share some final concluding thoughts on the paper that you read by Archisha? Anything that you want to share?
Yeah, in according to me, there was like it was mentioned the drawbacks of gender disparity, how
Hmm.
it is like affecting the development of the society, development of a country. So gender disparity in literacy or in education plays a huge role in the development.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
there is very like insignificant representation of women in a society. And if we look on like mm, on the marginalized groups,
Hmm.
so gender disparity increase.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
uh,
Continue.
okay, all right. Yeah, there was some problem in network, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying, gender disparity like is based on many things, like on the society also, and on in the place where we are living. If we
Hmm.
look on to the metropolitan cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, so we often see that there is very less gender disparity. And if we look upon the rural areas, as I mentioned earlier also, that gender disparity widens. So
Right.
that's what I observed.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a complexity of factors that interact with each other, and there's just not one factor. There's economic
Yeah.
situation, there's your social cultural background, and a lot of other, your gender, sexuality, all of these factors, I think, combine to determine what would be the literacy level of a particular community. I do agree. So that has been my takeaway from the research paper as well. That firstly, like I said, that it has to begin from elementary schools, and it has to be a curriculum change at the core level. And like we discussed, that the books need to be more inclusive of different genders and identities and sexualities. There's also one thing that I would like to add to it, that they need to be presented in a positive light. I think that it's necessary to show them as positive, strong characters, so that people know that these are just people like us, and shed them in a positive light. Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
has
and
been,
I would
yeah.
also like to add on, like there is a chapter in class 12 biology,
Okay.
reproductive health, and it
Hmm.
talks about sex education, but it just talk about the heterosexual people. There's no representation of homosexual people, and
Hmm.
it somehow I am not like yeah. it somehow represents that homosexuality is abnormality.
Hmm.
Like homosexuality is something which uh, which makes you reproductively not fit, I could say. Like there are few lines in the NCRT books
Hmm.
which are themselves very homophobic or not gender inclusive, I should say.
Right. Yeah, I think there is a definite need for textbooks to change. And another thing is that the committee that the government or CBSE puts together to make these changes in textbooks, they also need to be representative of the community. I read about this trans bill that was passed recently, and the committee that made the bill, it didn't have a good representation of trans people themselves. So we hope that when these changes happen in the textbooks, it is made by people for whom these changes are being made, right? To be more inclusive by being inclusive in the committees also that make these changes. Yeah. So thank you so much, Arpit, for joining us today. It was really wonderful discussing this paper with you. And I'm glad the viewers joined us and listened to this wonderful discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, take care.
Bye. Take care. See you soon.